Making your way in the world today takes everything you've got. Taking a break from all your worries sure would help a lot. Wouldn't you like to get away? Sometimes you wanna go where everybody knows your name, and they're always glad you came. You wanna be where you can see our troubles are all the same. You wanna be where everybody knows your name. You wanna go where people know people are all the same. You wanna go where everybody knows your name.
FightSaga.com presents WAWR Week Radio Chats with boxing scribe Joseph Heron.
Welcome everyone. Happy Monday night to all of you. Want to thank everyone for joining us this evening. I tell you what, we are being visited by a very special guest for this episode of WAWR Week Radio Chats, and that's none other than the editor-in-chief of FightSaga.com, the one and only Mr. Lee Cleveland. Lee, how the heck are you this evening, my friend?
Yes, sir. Like, I'm still ramped up. I'm still ramped up from Saturday night, man. I still got it, man.
Yeah, I tell you what, we're all still gushing over Terence Crawford's, eye-opening performances. Some, others, it was what we expected. And that was becoming the first man to stop Showtime Sean Porter within the distance. Want to give a shout out before we get started. I want to give a shout out to my brother Ray Ray. Thank you so much for joining us. Always, our brother Dragon Leg. Thank you for always supporting the show. Also, my brother HLD, the always informative, always comical HLD. Thank you so much for joining us. And we've got a lot to discuss, guys. On this episode of WAWR Week Radio Chats, we're going to discuss, the Crawford versus Porter fallout. Where do you rank Bud Crawford right now at 47? We're going to also talk about the business end of things extensively. Crawford, and his desire to remain a free agent as long as he can. We'll discuss how realistic that is. Also, guys, we're going to discuss pay-per-view numbers. Just found out that Crawford versus Porter rang up 190,000 purchases. What does this mean under the direct app purchase distribution, right? We'll also talk about a potential matchup next year versus Errol Spence. Who wins? Who should be favored? We're going to pick apart this style matchup, and if we have time later on, we're going to talk about Canelo possibly moving up to cruiserweight fighting Ilunga Makabu. We're also going to be sizing up Teofimo Lopez versus George Kambosos, as well as Brandon Figueroa versus Stephen Fulton on Showtime. Guys, we have a full show with everybody. Also want to give a shout out to Brother Muhammad. Thank you for joining us. Salute to Joseph and Lee. Is there any doubt Crawford is the best welterweight in pay-per-view number or pound-for-pound number one? Well, that's a huge controversial topic at this time. We're going to pick that apart as well. Also give a shout out to our brother Lenar. And guys, after we get acquainted and discuss this with our brother, the editor-in-chief, Lee Cleveland, guys, the link is downstairs. Click it if you'd like to join this conversation in this edition of WAWR Week Radio Chats. And thank you, Lenar. Yes, please hit that like button. It always helps the YouTube algorithm. Lee, what were your thoughts when you saw Crawford do the seemingly unthinkable and stop one of the most mentally and physically durable fighters in all of boxing on Saturday night, Showtime Sean Porter, in the 10th round of the scheduled 12th round fight?
Yeah, simply awesome. If you know what you're looking at, simply awesome. And this is what I think you and I projected, because we had that much respect for Crawford. But for him to actually go out and do that, it was amazing. I mean, I've been watching boxing, since like the late 70s, right? And Terence Crawford has impressed me as much as anybody else, and that's because he's patient. He doesn't get flustered. He's got the boxing ability. He can take a punch. He's got the brawl. He's got everything. He's got everything. And I figured Sean Porter is a warrior. He is. You look up warrior in the dictionary, you'll see Sean Porter. He's a warrior. He's going to take those shots. He's going to give those shots. He's going to give. But eventually, as time goes on, you're going to see the separation of class. And I think that's what we saw. And Crawford is a consummate professional. I was very impressed, but not surprised. Not surprised because the man's awesome. Truly, I mean, probably one of the best ever. I know people will say that's premature, and how dare you say that? But yeah, he's probably one of the best ever.
Indeed, brother. And at this time, we'd like to welcome our very dear friend to the show, Brother Lenar. Lenar, welcome to the program, senor.
Hey, Joseph, what's up?
We're doing better now that you're on the show, sir. I'd like to introduce you to our very dear friend, editor-in-chief of FightSaga.com, the boss, Mr. Lee Cleveland. He's also in the building. And any question or comment that you have directed toward our topic or toward us, please let it fly, Brother Lenar. Now, I know you wanted to go in and chime in during Gogi's show last night. So now you have the opportunity. Please tell us what you think about Crawford versus Porter and the 10th round stoppage.
Is this me or Lenar?
No, it's his brother Lenar.
Okay.
We can hear you right now, sir.
Okay. So first off, I want to congratulate Mr. Terence Bud Crawford for his win a couple nights ago. It was a very exciting, action-packed fight. And I want to give my condolences to Sean Porter because,
Are you there, sir?
Literally everybody. So
okay, there it is. There you are now.
My condolences to Sean Porter, and I want to thank him for giving us so many great fights, so many wars that it will go down in boxing history. With me assessing Crawford's performance, it was a good performance. I want to say, and I also want to say that I got to give credit where credit is due. I did not see the stoppage happening. I thought Sean Porter was going to be able to make it. Now, I do think the stoppage was premature. I looked at it from another angle, too, and from a cell phone camera point of view, and I can send it to you, Joseph, if you want. But I looked at it from a point of view, and Sean Porter was a little bit buzzed, and he was definitely he was a little hurt, but he could have continued at least to get one more shot to see if he got knocked down again or anything or started to get beat on, that I would have been perfectly fine with the ref stopping the fight. But I do believe the stoppage was a bit premature for his corner, his dad to do that. And even the commission I forgot to say this, from the commission actually was trying to stop Kenny from stopping the fight because, the commission was giving him the towel to throw in, and I can send you the angle.
No, you don't have to, Brother Lenar. In fact, the editor-in-chief, Lee, he's done a lot of research on the actual rules, and so you're not that far off the mark. Lee Cleveland, please tell us something about, the referee's discretion at allowing the fight to continue if their corner has a problem and throws in the towel. Does that mean that they have to stop the fight?
Absolutely not. No. So this was because of betting years ago. So legally, you can't throw in a towel and stop the fight. That's illegal. Only the referee can stop the fight. And when you have guys that are cut, the referee stops the fight based on the advice of a ring doctor. Not the ring doctor doesn't stop the fight. The referee stops based on the advice of a ring doctor. In these other cases, only the referee can stop a fight. Okay, that's it. No one else can stop a fight. Again, it's because of betting. Who's to say, hey, if I'm in one guy's corner and I bet on a 7th round knockout and I throw in the towel in the 6th round or the 7th round, well, then I win. Who's to say that towel is actually from the corner? So the referee it's his discretion. If the corner wants to stop the fight, oftentimes the referee will oblige him, but not all the time. And sometimes you have cases like with Cotto, the Cotto and the Joseph, help me out here.
Yuri
2010.
Foreman. Yuri Foreman at 154
Right,
pounds. That
where
was
the
a title fight
referee
for the
was
WBO.
referee Arthur Mercanti Jr. was well in his right to throw the towel back out of the ring, and that's what I would have done. You throw the towel back out of the ring because, hey, I didn't stop this fight. I don't know where that towel came from. I didn't stop this fight. You throw the towel out of the ring. So in these cases, Joseph, yeah, it's the sole discretion of the referee, period. And if you go back to wow, there's so many fights where the referee has basically gone to the corner, and the cornerman says, "Hey, we want to stop the fight." The referee says, "Well, no, let me talk to the fighter," because that meant the referee wasn't ready to stop the fight yet. But if the fighter didn't want to continue, well, then the referee would have stopped it. But the cornermen don't have that power. It's only the referee.
And Lee, with that said, that happened actually earlier this year in the UK, in which Ritson, right, was getting clobbered by Ponce, right, from Argentina. And yeah, the corner threw in the towel, and in this case, it was Ritson's father, right? He was his trainer and his father. He threw in the towel. The referee actually said, "Hey, do you want to continue?" Ritson said yes. He kicked out the towel and allowed the fight to continue.
Great example. Absolutely. And that's boxing. Exactly. We had a case with Brandon Rios when he fought the guy. Remember he fought the guy, the one-sided fight from the guy from Denver, Brandon Rios, like 7 or 8
Mike
years
Alvarado.
ago.
Yep.
Mike Alvarado. They went to Alvarado's corner, wanted to stop the fight. The referee said, "Hey, man, how do you feel?" So cornermen, whereas they can sort of stop the fight, they don't have any real power. It's a referee. The referee is going to act based on what he thinks is right.
So the final decision, but it's due to the ref. Understood. But with that being said, do you not think? Now let's be real here. The reason why he stopped the fight was because Kenny Porter went up there and told him to basically stop the fight because he was going to let him continue the fight. He said, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" Yep. And then he went to Kenny Porter, and then Kenny Porter said, "Nah, this is over with." So can we?
You know what? And you saw Sean Porter's expression. He was clearly frustrated,
right,
with himself, with the situation, as well as the stoppage. He even admitted post-fight that he didn't expect that to happen.
Right, but that's still the referee's decision. Like that's still, in this case, the referee said, "Hey, well, based on what his father says, I'm going to go along with it."
Yep. So the referee chose to stop the fight. Now, let me ask you, Lennar, do you think anything would have changed for the better for Sean Porter, or would it have gotten progressively worse for him?
I think knowing Sean Porter and what he brings to the table, Sean Porter, again, to his credit and his benefit, Sean Porter is a very fast recoverer.
Yep.
He's very fast. Is one thing I will give to Sean Porter. He's very fast in recovery. You've seen all the times he's got knocked down, he's come right back. So I believe Sean Porter, giving him the benefit of the doubt, I do believe he probably would have found a way out of the round.
Yep. Well, I will say this. I will say this, Lennar. In your opinion, though, have you ever seen him get knocked down twice in 1 minute?
No, I have not.
Have you ever faced a guy like Terence Crawford?
Yeah, a finisher against a finisher like Terence Crawford.
No, he has not. Not a finisher like Terence Crawford. Right. But I mean, he has high level.
And once again, you have to maybe factor in that that's probably the reason why Kenny Porter felt so strongly about throwing in the towel, saving his son, because once again, after listening to Kenny Porter post-fight, he had never seen his son in that situation, getting hit as cleanly as he was. And Sean Porter even admitted it. And he said, "You know what? I'm not used to getting hit that cleanly that often." So although Sean Porter was disgruntled initially, well, he agreed with his father. I will say this
But
though.
you have to understand too.
And,
These guys train. These guys have
yeah,
trained months and months for years and years. No one
Yeah.
knows Sean Porter like his father. No one. So I mean, we can
and
watch
it's and
boxing, but we don't know Sean Porter not 1/10 as well as his father knows him, because
of
he's
course,
been there in training.
of
He's been
course.
there through all the sparring. Been there through every second of every minute of every round in his life. So his father knows him a lot better than we do. You
Yep.
know.
And let me and I'll say this because it's spilled milk. It is what it is. Crawford got the stoppage. It is what it is. So it is. But I will say this. I will finally say this. And I can. And again, I have the video to prove. Because Sean Porter is saying two different things. Because Sean Porter said out of his own mouth, I was actually during his podcast, I think yesterday, he said I was actually more hurt with Spence. And then when you actually look at the video, Crawford was hitting him, but he was hitting him like it wasn't clean shots. Like the first shot was clean, but the other one were grazing shots. So I think it knocked his equilibrium off as well. But I mean, and when I look at the video from another angle, I said, well, let me just try to be objective here. Let me look at the angle. Terence Crawford was hitting Porter, but some of those shots were grazing off the side of his head. So he was half. It was like a half punch swipe up that was in Sean's head. And don't you think that, and you can make the same argument and say, well, hey, yes, Kenny Porter knows his son, but he has an emotional attachment to his son. So sometimes he can make emotional decisions, premature. He doesn't want to see his son getting there, possibly get beat up on. So that you can also take it from that angle as well. You can almost
Yep.
see in the angle that I saw in the video. The guy when the person who gave him the towel was trying to stop him from doing it because he thought he could continue. Then he saw his dad like, "Give me the towel!" You can almost see like the fatherly side of it. And why, you know what I'm saying?
Of course.
And although
No one
although
wants right.
fathers can make great coaches and stuff, fathers make great
Right.
coaches. Sometimes fathers love their sons too much, and they can make
Well,
decisions not the best decisions.
I mean, that's a good point. You have to remember, like these are two guys of boxing. At this moment, his father's lost all faith and confidence in his son to win the fight. Because he's stopping it. So he's obviously lost all faith and confidence.
Yep.
And if the father, if the trainer has no confidence and no faith in you to win, I mean that's a big deal. But I do see what you're saying. I do see that maybe he stopped it 30 or 40 seconds earlier than somebody else. I see your point. But at the same time, these guys have been doing this for a long, long time.
Yeah.
Sean's taken a lot of shots, a lot of good shots from a lot of good fighters. He saw something, and the referee agreed with him. He saw something, I think, that, that was just different. Now, could he have gone on? I guess we'll never know. It's hard. I mean, would I have let it go on? I mean, I think it was a bit early.
Yep.
That said, I think that I think that it was just sort of prolonged. I think the inevitable was the inevitable.
Yep.
Right? Whether that round or the next round, I think the inevitable was the inevitable. And maybe he could have gone the distance and just taken the shellacking the remaining rounds. But his father, these guys make a lot of money. They work hard. Like they spend a lot of hours in the gym that we don't see. Hundreds and hundreds of hours in the gym, sparring, training, that we don't see. He knows his son. And he's not going to just stop a fight just like that, right? I mean, it's.
I will say this, Lee. I will say this. I will say this, guys. Now think about Wilder versus Fury 3, right? There were several moments in that fight, in the back half of that fight, where it looked like Fury was going to get a knockout and the referee was going to get a stoppage. And then all of a sudden Wilder would land something big and he would show the referee that he was still alive and kicking in that fight.
Right.
And it really made for great drama for the fans. Were we ultimately deprived of some great welterweight drama with Sean Porter and that stoppage? Lenar, your thoughts?
And just to show you guys that I'm not trying to take away credit from anybody. Like, for example, that's a perfect example you brought up. For me, and then like we said, there's all different opinions in boxing here. For me, I would have stopped the Wilder and Fury fight a round or two earlier. because I'm like, there's no way he could have came back from that. You see what I'm saying? I would have stopped that because I mean he was bleeding out of his ears. I mean it was bad. It was horrible.
Well, thank God that Russell Mora didn't stop it.
Oh, yeah. Joseph, are you talking about the second fight or the third fight? I'm talking
third
about
fight, sir.
Oh, the third. Okay, I was talking about the second fight.
No. The second fight was in my opinion, was a fine stoppage. The third fight, though, I'm so glad that referee Russell Mora allowed the fight to continue as long as it did, because it allowed for that amazing drama. And we're looking at pretty much a lock for the fight of the year as a result. Hold on real quick. Let's go to the comment board for a second. Ray states, starting to sound like the boxing voice. Bite your tongue, brother. Well, once again, this is War Week Radio Chats. This is not just our show with James Gogi or Coach Ronnie Shields. We dropped the link for a reason. You can always come on and discuss this with myself and editor Lee Cleveland if you'd like. And Dragon Leg, what did I do to you, man? He says, Dragon Leg says, I accidentally reported you, Joe. I put my phone in my phone. My bad. Well, long as you didn't mean it, brother, it's all good. I want to welcome Lemon Pepper Chitlins to the show. What's up, fellas? What's up with you, my brother? Thank you so much for joining us. Boxing Voice 2.0. Bite your tongue, Ray. Come on and come on the board, man. Tell us what you think. Tell us what you really think.
That doesn't even make sense. This is a podcast where people can join in. That's everybody.
Yeah, it's our War Week Radio Chats, and once again, we're going to be a lot more consistent with this on a regular basis. On Sunday night, we have our we have Coach James Gogi breaking down the weekend's action. Then every Monday night, we're going to have War Week Radio Chats. Every Tuesday night, we have our show with legendary fight trainer Ronnie Shields. On Wednesday night, we're going to start having another episode of War Week Radio Chats on a regular basis with our friend Lee Cleveland. And then on Thursday, we're going to have a new show with Fight Saga correspondent Rodney Green. He's going to be coming back to War Week Radio Network. And then on Friday, we're going to have another pre-fight episode of War Week Radio Chat. So we've got 5 nights that we're going to be live on the air. Lemon Pepper Chitlins chimes in. He says, Kenny knew what was coming. He spared his son a highlight reel head-snapping KO. You know what? That very well might be the case. But you know what? Damn it. I'm with Lee Cleveland. These guys, they train way too hard not to be given the benefit of the doubt.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
We didn't get to see the real drama unfold, right? In my opinion, I think the stoppage was way too premature. Okay, we pay good money, especially on pay-per-view, to see these events stop prematurely. And considering what's on the line, these fighters deserve to be given the benefit of the doubt. Okay?
But again, you have to give the father knows him better than you all of us put together. The father has seen this guy.
I will say this, though, Lee. I will say this. If you can't take the heat, get out of the damn kitchen. Okay? This is what you signed up for. Right? That's my opinion on it.
Yeah, sorry, guys. Go ahead.
I think the father saw something where he's just like, hey, there's just no way, it kind of reminds me of, I remember, like, if you watch, like, the last round between De La Hoya and Pacquiao, where, De La Hoya's trainer is like, he's just too fast. He's too good. Just give it up, man. Just give it up. It's like he's lost all faith in him at that moment. He's like, just give it up. He's too fast. He's too good.
That was Nacho Beristain.
Nacho Beristain, right. So I think in this case, it was sort of like another where it wasn't in between the corner, but it's like, okay, this guy is just too good. He's figured this out. What was it early for us? Yeah. I mean, you know how I am, Joseph, right? Like, I want to see a real knockout. Like, I really, but at the same time, I mean, his father, who has obviously the vested interest in him, if he saw something, he's like, he obviously didn't have the confidence in his own fighter, his own son, to continue because he saw something, you
Yep.
know. And but these guys train really hard, so he's not going to take that lightly. He's not going to be like, "Oh, we'll just stop the fight, come back another day." I mean, this guy's busted his ass through his career.
Yep.
He busted his ass through his career to get a fight like this.
Yep.
And
His
we
father's
have to
not going to just stop it on the spur of the moment.
and we have to understand the mentality and the punishment the fighter has been through. Sean Porter is always, he's never been to the point where, oh my gosh, he's about to get stopped. You know what I'm saying? He's never been to that type of point. So does Sean Porter not at least deserve? Okay, let's say you get one more knockdown. If you get knocked down, because if you got knocked down again, I would have stopped the fight. I just would have went with the 3 knockdown rule, and that would have been it. But I mean, if I would have said, okay, Sean, I would have looked at if I was a ref. All right, Sean, I'm gonna give you one more chance. If you're in this or not, and then that's what I would have. Because knowing Sean Porter, because Sean Porter is a quick recoverer. So, but I mean, it is what it is.
Well, I will say this in defense of Kenny Porter. He said, and I saw interviews before the fight in which Kenny already let the cat out of the bag saying, you know what? I didn't like Sean's preparation for this fight. He already had it in his mind that, look, if I've seen my son taking unprecedented punishment in this fight, getting hit cleanly, more cleanly than he's ever been hit before, I'm going to pull the trigger on the stoppage. He already had it in his mind, right?
Ooh.
So once again, this is, let me ask you something. Lee, you first, and then Lenar, you second. There's obvious dissension within Sean Porter and Kenny Porter's relationship. Do you think Sean announced his retirement to basically relieve his dad, Kenny Porter, of his chief second duties? And do you expect to see Sean Porter get back in the fight game with a new trainer sometime next year? Lee, your response first.
I absolutely positively expect Sean to be back in the fight game. With a new trainer, I don't know. Maybe not. But I mean, this guy is really good. He's one of these guys that he's going to give anybody a run for their money. I mean, damn, he would give Sugar Ray Leonard or Hagler, if he was so heavier, he'd give them a run for their money. Yeah. I mean, he's a tough guy. So I don't think, and he's not old yet. I think we'll see him back again. I think he'll have, maybe he might take a year off, maybe a year and a half off. I think we'll see him back again. Will it be back with his father? I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, it hasn't been. It's worked out so far. I mean, they've had a good relationship so far. I don't see why this. He didn't seem, in the interviews that I saw him in, he didn't seem that critical of his father. He just said Terence was a great fighter. He said that, Terence had the mental game and had the technique and had the strategy to beat him. I mean, he didn't really blame his father. I don't see this as an early stoppage. I see it as an early stoppage in the sense that, like you said, I would have given it one more knockdown, but I don't see this. I just don't think he would have come back. I mean, I don't think there was no coming back.
I don't think he would have came back either. Because at that point when he got knocked out the second time, he was too far down on point, unless he would have been able to knock Crawford down. But I just think he would have been able to possibly survive.
I mean, Crawford's a killer. I mean, he is.
Well, our brother Lemon Pepper Chitlin says, I don't expect him to return. He's an overachiever and a hard worker due to his father coaching, but he's technically flawed. And once again, Lenar, our very first conversation several months ago when this fight was first announced, if you recall, we got into a very heated discussion on someone else's channel and me trying to tell you that, look, even though Sean Porter competes at the elite level, he's not an elite level talent. What allows him to compete at this level, though, is his customarily mental and physical durability.
Yep.
But with lack of power, right? And his technical flaws, right? Often smothering his offense at times. Yeah, more often than not, he's going to lose at the elite level. And now you look at his resume. He's got a very checkered record. One, I will give him a ton of credit for his willingness to fight the best, right? That can't go unseen and unrecognized. But when you hear Sean Porter post-fight say, you know what, I don't want to be a gatekeeper of the welterweight division. Yeah, that's clearly where he's headed. Once again, you look at his losses, right, to Kell Brook, to Keith Thurman, to Errol Spence Jr., now to Terence Crawford, arguably a controversial victory over Yordeñas Ugas. Yeah, it's like, you know, he can hang and he can compete at the elite level because of his durability. But yeah, it's very difficult. And more than likely, he's not going to win against the elite. In fact, I would favor Virgil Ortiz Jr. as well as Jaron Ennis and maybe even Staniones in defeating Sean Porter. So I think he understands where he is. Your thoughts on this, Lenar?
Yeah. See, there's boxing, and I remember us of having that when we first met. When we first met. See, here's the thing. It's when you phrase certain state, you have to phrase things a certain way. Like, for example, when I say that Sean Porter overall, does he have an elite level skill set? No, he does not. But can he compete at the elite level? Yes.
Yeah.
And you see what I'm saying? You see what I'm saying? How what you say one thing and it can change it up. But does he have an elite level? Does he have some elite level things? I think so. But like overall,
in my opinion, only his durability. But I will say this. He fought when Terence Crawford, when he tied him up every time he got on the inside and tried to work underneath, Terence Crawford tied him up, allowed the referee to break him up. With that said, he went to plan B, and I thought he was effective in disrupting the timing and rhythm of the consummate counterpuncher, Terence Crawford. I thought he had very good success in the first half of the fight. But I'll say this, and admittedly, I'm going to – it's funny. Midway through the fight, Lee Cleveland called me up, and he said, Joseph, I think we're going to start to see some separation from the much better fighter, Terence Crawford. And we sure did in a big way. Before we go forward, let's go to the comment board. I want to give a shout out to my brother, Antonio Luna. He says, War Week Radio Network is a real boxing podcast. Yep, and that was a la James Gogi. He said that last night. Want to give a shout out to my brother, Big Luke, who's joining us tonight. Thank you for joining us, my friend. Click the link. Put on your headphones, my friend. That's Big Luke. Yes.
That's my Luke. Hey, Joseph, and I think I said this before. The only thing that I can make an argument that Sean Porter is elite in is footwork. I think
you know what? He does have very good footwork. And you know what? He actually surprised me with his plan B. It was actually quite effective for a while.
Yeah.
But once again, Terence Crawford, someone who has so many tools in the box, right? That lends to having a very high ring IQ when you have that much ability, right? It allows you to have a very, very high ring IQ and that many more options than most of your opponents. But Big Luke says, Lee Cleveland and Rod Green making comebacks? Why not Showtime Sean Porter? Hell yes. Let's reach out to him, see if he can join the podcast. Great to hear from you, Editor-in-Chief. Yes, great indeed. Want to give a shout out to my brother, MMA Sucks. I love the moniker. He says, Porter is an average fighter with average skills. Crawford did what he was supposed to do, no more, no less. The only thing Sean Porter is elite in is heart. You know what, brother? I'm not going to argue with that. That was my entire argument with my brother Lenar several months ago when this fight was announced. I tell you what, guys, let's shift gears a little bit because we're already 30 minutes in and we haven't even touched Bud's ranking at 147 pounds. Lee, I'll give you the first crack at this topic. Where would you rank Bud Crawford in the welterweight division at this time? Lee, are you there, sir? Well, I'll tell you what, while we're waiting for Lee to get back in the queue, Lennar, where would you rank Bud Crawford at 147 pounds at this time?
With going basis off of accomplishments, number 2. Again, we have to consider who he has beat. He has beat a top level opponent, in my opinion, now in Sean Porter. But then you still have somebody like Errol Spence, who's already beat Sean Porter, beat Danny Garcia. In my opinion, beat a better version of Kell Brook. So I would still put it number 2. But if you're going off of eye test, if you're going by some eye test, I wouldn't be mad if somebody put him number 1 just off of eye test. But if you're going off of accomplishments, you still would have to put Spence as number 1.
Well, I said this before the fight, rather, on last week's episode, and I said this on H Money's podcast as well. I said, look, if Terence Crawford becomes the first man to stop Sean Porter within the distance, one of the most durable fighters in boxing, in my opinion, not only does he prove himself to be the number 1 fighter in the welterweight division, but he also retakes the number 1 pound-for-pound slot in boxing. He gets that distinction over Canelo Alvarez. And here's my rationale, right? You look at Canelo Alvarez right now, he's in his prime fighting weight at 168. He has become one of the most complete fighters in boxing at 68. But was he at 60? Was he at 54? Was he at 75? Will he be at cruiserweight? Okay, when you look at Terence Crawford, he's been dominant at every single weight division he's been competing at. 35, 40, 47. Okay, he's been dominant. He's dominated every single opponent he's ever been in the ring with. All right? In my opinion, that makes him the best fighter in boxing. That's just my opinion, though. Pound for pound lists, that's always up for debate, and that's always opinion based, right?
Yeah, it's always opinion based. I can't, even with Crawford, I can't put him over Canelo, because I have to, again, we can come back and make the same argument and say, well, has Caleb Platt ever been stopped? Has the person he has what's the guy's name? Excuse me.
Well, once again, hold on just 1 moment. But you're talking about guys like, and once again, his run at 168 is incredible. Callum Smith, Billy Joe Saunders, Caleb Plant. That's an incredible run. Okay, because all those guys are legitimate title holders. And yeah, they're capable of beating anyone on any given night in that weight division. But how did he perform at 60? How did he perform at 54? Once again, this is a guy who dumped his title in the trash to avoid a specific opponent for a year, right? I can't imagine Crawford ever doing that, right? So let's get our brother, Lee Cleveland, back in the mix and get your opinion. Lee Cleveland, who is the number 1 fighter in the welterweight division in your opinion? And once again, this is just your opinion.
In the welterweight division?
Yep.
I mean, I think definitely Terence Crawford. I mean, look at with the last 6 or 7 stoppages, undefeated. He's looked brilliant in every fight. Hasn't looked vulnerable at all, except for.
I disagree with that one.
You know, I mean, Spence is very good. He's great, also, but I think that Crawford's resume is much better, and it's too bad that the two won't fight. I don't think the two will fight because Al Heyman, for obvious reasons, doesn't want that fight, and Al Heyman, I wouldn't want that fight either, because I mean this guy's awesome.
Lee.
Okay, Lennar, your retort, brother.
Yeah, now we're gonna get the good television here. Lee, I gotta Lee, I gotta disagree with you on this one. Crawford has looked vulnerable, and I didn't get to really touch this.
Okay. In what fight has he looked vulnerable, sir?
I had actually Porter up before the stoppage. before the two knockdowns in the 10th round. I wouldn't be mad if you had Crawford up. I wouldn't be mad if you had it a draw. But Crawford was getting really buzzed by Sean Porter, and the performance Sean Porter put on was a great performance, albeit it ended in the stoppage. But I've seen Crawford go 12 rounds with Jose Benavidez, and this is
he's a hell of a fighter, Benavidez.
I mean, Benavidez has never fought, did not even fight for a title before he got to Terence Crawford.
That's not true. He was the WBA regular champion at 140 pounds.
Oh, so are we counting regular champions, or are we talking about super champions?
No, I'm talking about opportunities received. Once again, resumes are contingent upon opportunities received, right? I'm going to quote Emmanuel Stewart right now, right? Emmanuel Stewart once told me, before he passed away, God rest his soul, he said, look, Joseph, resumes and trinkets are for fighters, are for fight fans, writers, and networks who don't quite understand yet what they're looking at in the ring. Trust your eyes. They don't deceive you. That's one of the last pieces of advice that he ever gave me. And you know what? He's right on the money. Once again, resumes are contingent upon opportunities received. You can only fight who your promoter puts in front of you. That's it. And when you're not a huge ticket seller and huge attraction like Terence Crawford, well, and you've got the ability of a Terence Crawford, well, you're not going to get very many opportunities now, are you? Once again, you can't be oblivious to the fact that everyone on the PBC side of the street has gone out of their way to avoid Terence Crawford, even though that's the fight that pretty much the real bosses of boxing, the fans, have demanded.
Right.
For the past 3 years, the fans have demanded that fight. Why wasn't it made? Why hasn't it been made up to this point?
Too much risk for the reward. I mean,
That's it.
That's it. I mean, look at Terence Crawford. Like, okay, this was a young Uriel Gamboa, knockout. Ricky Burns, clean decision. John Molina Jr., TKO.
Yep.
Julius Andongo, KO. Jeff Horn, TKO.
Felix Diaz, Uriel Gamboa.
Admiras Kavalauskas, Sean Porter, Kell Brook. We can go on and on. Like, this is a who's who of welterweights and junior welterweights. I mean, this is like this is.
I've been on record as stating, and a lot of people gave me heat for this and a lot of flack. I don't put much stock into those guys that you named, especially with the circumstances with some of them other than Porter. But I mean, and I said, as if Crawford fights Porter and beats Porter, because I consider Porter a level, like you mean, I've been consistent, Joseph, when you may have the argument, then I would have to say his resume goes up. So there's no debating that his resume is starting to get better.
Yep.
But do I think his resume is better than Spence's at the moment? No, I do not. And I think it's very close. I think it's very close, but I would still put Spence's resume a notch above.
Well, Crawford. I will say this: how convenient, because Errol Spence is fighting who is promoter, and yes, I'm saying Al Heyman is a promoter, is putting in front of him, right? How convenient. You can't tell me that Terence Crawford hasn't desired those fights. This is why he's leaving Top Rank, and that's going to be our next topic, guys. Let's go to the comment board. Just 1 second, Lennar. We'll give you a chance to retort. Antonio Luda, he says that Terence Crawford, #1 in the welterweight division. We'll go to our brother Ronald Finkley. Thank you for joining our show. Thank you for listening. He says, "What's great, Warweek Radio? Just listening. I tell you what, brother. If you change your mind, don't be afraid to click the link, my friend." MMA sucks, says the eye test lies. And that's a quote from Terence Crawford. I'll say this. I've never heard any fighter say that the eye test lies. Never. Never have I said that. You have to send me a link to where Terence Crawford is saying that MMA sucks. Thank you, brother. But Lennar, I will say this, okay? And let's go into our next topic. I want to get your opinion of this. Mm-hmm. Okay, and I know you have a very strong feeling about this, and I want to get your opinion on this, Lennar. Mm-hmm. Terence Crawford versus Errol Spence Jr. If it happens next year, who wins and why?
So let me start off by saying this. When I seen the Crawford versus Porter fight, I saw a lot of opportunities where Crawford was vulnerable at against a smaller, shorter guy, and what Spence doesn't have the deficits of a Porter. But with that being said, it's hard to pick Spence just based off the inactivity and the eye injury. I mean, I have to be logical here. So that's why I call it a 50-50 fight if Spence wants to go in there, because styles make fights. When you have two fighters who have great skill sets and they're near even, then what else do we go by? We have to go by a stylistic matchup. And, that's what I would go by, the next criteria. And
okay,
so,
let me ask you this, Leonard, very quickly. Let me ask you this. Have you ever seen, okay, so once again, Sean Porter was able to impose his will, even though he lost. He was able to impose his will on Errol Spence Jr. and force Errol Spence to fight his fight. Have you ever seen anyone impose his will on Terence Crawford and force him to fight their fight? Have you ever seen that?
Yes, and I guess we were watching two different fights because I saw a back and forth between Sean Porter and Terence Crawford. I saw Sean Porter muscle around Terence Crawford and push him back, and I seen Terence Crawford muscle around Sean Porter. One thing about
you know what? We did watch two different fights, and that would probably, answer the idea, or that would probably justify or explain our difference in scorecards in last Saturday night's fight. Lee Cleveland, have you ever seen anyone impose their will on Terence Crawford and force him to fight their fight?
Absolutely not. So, and that's why I called you like mid-fight on Saturday. I said, Porter's looking good, and he's doing. I mean, we expected because he has a heart of a warrior. I mean, again, he is a definition of a warrior, Sean Porter. But I said we're going to see a separation in class.
Yep,
we did. It came. So my point is that separation came, and as far as Crawford, I mean, I've only seen him really bothered. I mean, I think the Kavaliauskas fight, for a few seconds, he was bothered, with the knockdown that wasn't a knockdown or wasn't able to knock down. But even then, he was composed. So he wasn't like, oh, I'm going to kick this guy's ass.
As well as his fight against Yuriorkis Gamboa. Yep.
Yeah, he got knocked down or whatever, and then he got back up. And it was like business as usual. He's like, he wasn't even phased. He was like, okay, whatever.
Yep.
And business as usual. That's really, that's really impressive. I mean, here's a guy, I mean, he can take a shot, he can get knocked down, gets back up, and he's himself. He gets back up and he's like, okay, whatever.
So if I can give my perspective just for 1 minute of what I saw, if I could just
the floor is yours, sir.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it, Joseph. So what I saw during the fight with Porter, I saw a back and forth until the 10th round, until Crawford started to turn on the pressure in the later rounds. What I saw was Porter, a man pushing Crawford back, and Crawford was pushing him back. It was a back and forth action. And actually, I consider boxing a game of inches. Do you, Joseph?
Absolutely, sir.
Yeah, it's a game of inches. A lot of times when Sean Porter was coming in the early part of the fight, he was missing by inches. Please understand that Terence Crawford has almost a 5-inch reach advantage on Sean Porter. And you saw a lot of times Sean Porter had to lunge in sometimes to get in on Terence Crawford. Errol Spence is not going to have that problem. Errol Spence has a 72-inch reach. Crawford has a 74-inch reach. So he's going to find it. And Errol Spence is a little bit taller, so Crawford's going to have to swing slightly up. So Errol Spence is going to be able to be in the wheelhouse of Terence Crawford much easier. We all know how rangy Errol Spence is as well. When I saw the fight, and I said, give me 30 more seconds, and I'll give you 4. And when I seen a lot of times see Sean Porter when he wasn't able to get in, it was because he was just too short to get in. Errol Spence Jr., one who presses forward on, and please understand, Danny Garcia said this man is 3 times, I think he said 3 times or 5 times as strong as Thurman. Errol Spence has never been pushed back. Even with Kell Brook, when Kell Brook was the only guy who was close to pushing Spence back was Kell Brook. But even then, all he was able to do was hold him back. And we talk about Kell Brook, a man who's competed at 154, 160. Errol Spence came on strong. I've never seen Errol Spence get pushed back. Now with Sean Porter, Joseph, to your point, when you said Sean Porter pushed Errol Spence back, it's not necessarily, in my eyes, it's not necessarily that he pushed Spence back. It's that he used footwork and it was outboxing Spence with footwork and being very quickly and buzzing Spence. But as far as pushing him back, I've never seen Errol Spence get pushed back. And this is all without a strength and conditioning coach, without Blu-ray. So I actually think that if you were to see a pocket, I think if Errol Spence would have pushed forward, you're going to see Spence push the heat on Crawford, and you'll see Crawford get pushed back like you've never seen him push back. And Errol Spence has more power than Porter, a little bit more power than Porter. To me, Porter was buzzing Crawford like Crawford was buzzing Porter. What do you think a person in a pocket like Errol Spence is going to be able to do?
Okay, you know what, Lennar, and I, you know what, I'm going to allow Lee Cleveland to retort before myself because I have a lot to add to that. But Lee, what do you think of a Spence versus Crawford matchup, sir?
Yeah, I mean, I think it'll be very different. I mean, what Lenore said was good information. But obviously, Terence Crawford is not going to train the same way for Errol Spence that he trained for Sean Porter. Okay.
Yep.
Two different fights. Hey, if I'm fighting Mike Tyson on one end and Evander Holyfield on another end, that's two different fights. I'm going to train different ways. So you really can't say, okay, so I fight Tyson this way. You can't say, oh, well, Holyfield has done this, you've done that, because I train for this style. One of the
very good point
about Terence Crawford, one of the great things, and he reminds me a lot of Marvin Hagler here. He's ambidextrous. He can fight lefty or righty, either way. He can box, slug, fight lefty or righty. He's like a smaller Hagler. He can do everything. He can do he can be an aggressor. He can move back and fight. He can do everything. He's not going to fight Errol Spence the same way he fought Sean Porter. Okay, that's a totally different fight, totally different training camps. Okay, but I'll tell you this: like he will adjust to whatever Errol Spence has. He'll adjust, and that's what makes guys like him and guys like Floyd, they adjust.
Yep,
they adjust.
Look. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Lee.
So I mean that's what I mean. What I'm saying is, sometimes you can't base it on that because you're going to fight a different fight versus a different fighter.
And
that's it. That's why you fight the fights. Hold on, Lennar, and I'm going to chime in right after this, sir. Brother MMA sucks, and I love that moniker once again. He said the only people who hasn't had a longer reach advantage over is Postal and Benavidez, and those were his toughest fights. Very good point. Big Luke chimes in, says, I bought Nello versus Plant, so I couldn't afford Bud versus Showtime Sean Porter. I'm in need of another stimulus check because, damn it, I picked the wrong fight.
It sounds like Luke.
Okay, yep, that's Big Luke. Thank you for joining us tonight, brother. We appreciate it. I will say this, Lennar, with all due respect, you're thinking of the best version of Errol Spence Jr., right? Pre-car accident, pre-detached retina, right? You're considering the best version of Errol Spence Jr. Okay, he's got to prove that he's still the same guy. In my opinion, he's damaged goods, brother. And look, I have it firsthand from someone who lives in DFW that they've seen him in the clubs getting hammered. He doesn't live that Spartan lifestyle like Terence Crawford. He drinks like a fish.
Well, he's never lived that style.
Okay? This is a guy who, in my opinion, is damaged goods. Errol Spence Jr. is not the same fighter. He's only fought one time since September of 2019. Okay? In my opinion, not only all of the detriment that he's put his body through, but also his inactivity. In my opinion, if this fight is made in March of next year, which looks like it may, you have to favor Terence Crawford going into that fight. In my opinion, Errol Spence Jr. is damaged goods, brother. Don't be surprised if Al Heyman cashes him in, right? And puts together Crawford versus Spence sooner rather than later. Your final thoughts on this before we move forward?
And I say this, and it's hard to argue because, again, Spence is inactive and he's had this eye injury. It's very hard to argue. It's almost like I'm arguing a losing battle here. This is going off of the assumption that he's okay. I don't believe Spence when he says no tune-ups. I don't think he's going to go straight into a Crawford fight without being over a year of inactivity. Is he damaged goods? No, I do not think so. Again, I don't see his. I have to see. An eye is a very delicate thing, and I don't know how the eye is. If his eye is okay, if he's able to make it through a training camp and a real fight, there's a lot of ifs. If he's able to, then I don't think he's damaged goods at all. And I think that you're going to see a great fight between him and Crawford. And I think he actually knocks out Crawford. But again, it's hard. I understand if you're going to favor Crawford because it's hard to argue for a man who's been this inactive and coming off of an eye injury. It's hard to argue for a man like that. So I understand if people would pick Crawford. But I'm going under the assumption.
My final thoughts on this, Lennar, brother Lennar. Let me ask you something. When's the last time Errol Spence Jr. has scored a knockout?
Was against Carlos Ocampo.
Yep. In June of 2018. Right? So you mean to tell me, you're trying to tell me that he's going to knock out an elite level talent like Terence Crawford? That's what you're telling me.
I'm telling you that he has a great chance to, being that Crawford gives him a lot of opportunity he's going to be able to take advantage of, and that he's just simply going to be able to bully him around. Because if Porter's bullying you around until the later part of the fight, I think that Errol Spence is going to be able to do the same thing. And we all know how he has his skills, is going to be able to cut off the ring. Listen, Joseph, I understand that I'm going to say this. I understand that it's not looking good. And I understand that it's like, man, how can you argue for a guy like this? But I trust him, and I trust that he's going to be able to come back. And if he gets his next fight in whoever, because I don't think it's going to be Crawford. But if it's not Crawford, if he gets his next tune-up, and if his eye is okay, because eyes, like I said, is a serious thing. If his eye is okay, then I honestly believe that. But I mean, again, that's just me.
Okay, well,
this is a great fight.
Point taken. Lee, your thoughts?
It's a great fight. I mean, I'm going to be sort of in the middle. I'm going to say that yeah. I mean, Spence can. I mean, if Crawford doesn't bring his A game and he's not 100% physically and mentally prepared, yeah. I mean, Spence could beat him.
Okay, let me ask you something, Lee. Have you ever seen Terence Crawford not bring his A game?
No.
Exactly.
That's the thing. I don't think 100%. If Errol Spence is 100%, Crawford would beat him.
Okay.
Spence is just better.
Hold on. Lennar? So once again, let's assume that Errol Spence Jr. is indeed 100%. Okay, we'll give you that benefit of the doubt.
Thank you.
My opinion, this is a game of distance, right? In my opinion, if Errol Spence is indeed 100% and has the better inside game, which he does, right? If this fight is fought on the inside in the pocket, advantage Errol Spence. Right. If this fight is fought from mid to long range, advantage Terence Crawford. In my opinion, that's what it boils down to. Where is this fight going to be fought? Have you ever seen Terence Crawford fight someone where he doesn't control range?
So to answer, and then again, we're just going off the assumption that he's 100% here. Have you ever seen Errol Spence not be able to cut off the ring? And I've seen, and we all know how great Errol Spence is as controlling distance as well. This is a man coming off of a car wreck in a 15-month layoff, the longest of his career, able to control range on Danny Garcia. Now, Danny Garcia doesn't have feet, but let's also consider the circumstances with just a jab. You don't think that at least Errol Spence is good enough to get in the pocket with Terence Crawford? Do you think that Errol Spence is some fighter like?
Okay, let me ask you this, Lenar. Hold on, let me ask you this. Going back to the Sean Porter fight, okay? Obviously, Sean Porter is a very effective aggressor, one of the more effective aggressors in boxing. What happened whenever he collapsed the pocket? Terence Crawford tied his ass up, allowed the ref to create that distance for him. What makes you think TC is not going to do the same thing against Spence?
Well, like I said, he's not stronger than Spence. I'm telling you, you're gonna see Errol Spence tie him up. He's gonna push him back.
Well, once again, there are no right or wrong answers. Until they fight the fights. And that's the last thing I'm gonna say. Hold on just 1 second. Want to go to our comment section? Lemon Pepper Chitlin says, "Preach, Deacon Warwick." Yeah. Thank you, my friend. Yes, I'm sorry. I get on my soapbox from time to time. That's just what happens on this channel. Big Luke says, very sad to hear of Errol's demise. In my opinion, he's damaged goods. And I'm sorry to say that because I think Errol Spence Jr. is a tremendous asset to the sport of boxing. MMA Sucks says this, and Lee Cleveland, I want to get your thoughts on this. He says, Jaron Ennis smokes Crawford right now like a cheap cigar. Stops him. Wow. Want to thank Puro Sur Central for coming to the show. Salute Warwick Radio, panel and chat. Salute to you, my friend. Antonio Luna says, Leonard Thomas believes in the Tooth Fairy. Oh, come on. Stop it. Look. I'll say this, and no casting aspersions to anyone who has the confidence and the cojones to come on and voice their opinion with me and Editor-in-Chief Lee Cleveland. Lenar, you get a lot of credit, brother, for coming on and voicing your opinion and, well, sticking to what you truly believe. Lee Cleveland, let me ask you this. Is Jaron Ennis the elite of welterweight? Is it only a matter of time before he beats everyone at 47?
Maybe. Yeah, maybe. He definitely has the potential. He's freakishly good, Joseph. He's really good.
Lee, I'll say this before you go forward. In my opinion, this is just my opinion, right? Jaron Ennis looks like a young Sugar Ray Robinson.
He does.
In my opinion. He can do it all. Pick your poison. How do you want to get your ass whooped? He can fight on the inside. He can fight from mid to long range. He's ambidextrous. He's a switch hitting badass. And he's got a great defense. And he's a big 47 pounder. In my opinion, he gets belts in all three weight divisions, 47, 54, 60. I can see him being undefeated moving into middleweight.
We need to see him against the Sean Porters, Keith Thurmans of the division. See him in those types of fights where he's really, but he looks brilliant. He looks magnificent. He looks like an A++ fighter right now. But we haven't seen him against. I
agree. I think Jaron Ennis is really impressive.
One thing I will say, though, Lenar and Lee, I will say this, and this is the last thing I'm going to say about Jaron Ennis before I give you guys the floor. Don Chargan once told me, hey, you know what? Don't get too high on a prospect until you see how well he can take a punch. We have yet to see that. And to be honest with you, in my opinion, I don't think we see that at 47.
He's not going to take any punches.
No, that's my point. I don't think he's going to.
Yeah,
he's really good. It would be great to see him and Crawford fight, or him and Spence fight. Before those guys get long in the tooth. That would be those would be awesome fights. But Jaron Ennis is just amazing.
Yeah, Jaron Ennis is very amazing. He's a very amazing fighter, and that's the fighter that I would tell Spence to stay away from, especially right now. I'm not
Man,
worried
I'd
about,
tell
I'm not worried
anyone.
about Crawford. I'm not really worried if Spence is healthy. I'm not worried about Crawford. I'm more worried about somebody called Boots Ennis. That guy is absolutely incredible, and he's big. So, and he's just a fucking beast. Like I just gotta see his chin tested, and it gets in a better competition. But it's like,
Lennar, I will say this: when you say I don't have any reason to be afraid of Terence Crawford, I'll say this in the immortal words of The Fly: be afraid, be very afraid. Terence Crawford is a complete switch hitting badass. Yeah, there's a reason why he seemingly has such a high level ring IQ. Right? Because he's got so many tools in his arsenal, right? When you have that many tools in your arsenal and you're that versatile, it allows you to have a high ring IQ, right? Yeah. It allows you to have that many options. Like, think about this. When Victor Postal, he fought a very disciplined fight, moving laterally, and he outboxed him. This is a guy, pick your poison. How do you want to get your ass whooped? Terence Crawford is a complete fighter. In my opinion, aside from Alexander Usyk and Canelo Alvarez, the most complete fighter in boxing. With that said, 100% version of Errol Spence is an elite level pound-for-pound fighter also. Damn it, this is why we want to see the fight.
Exactly.
It's the fight that everyone wants to see at 147 pounds. And you know what? Exactly. Damn it, I'll say this. Now that Terence Crawford is a free agent, it's the fight that we need to see. There are no more excuses. That's it. We need to see this fight happen. That's it.
I agree. I 100% agree. And I just don't. Again, I don't like to count fighters out, so I'm not going to sit here and count Spence out yet, because he came back and proved a lot of people wrong with Danny Garcia.
Oh, so I'm hell of a fighter.
Lee, your final thoughts on this before we move to our next topic of Terence Crawford free agency.
Joseph, and the 190,000 buys. We discuss that as next.
Thank you. We need to discuss that as well. Lee, your final thoughts on this matchup.
Yeah,
before we start talking about the business of boxing.
Crawford is awesome. I think I really think like I go back long time, right? Like I go back longer than my age. I go back to like Jack Dempsey, Carnera, all those guys, Sugar Ray Robinson, Kid Gavilan. Terence Crawford's one of the best ever, easily. And I really think, and it breaks my heart to say this, because I was such a fan. I think he's better than Pee Wee Whitaker. I think he's a better fighter.
Wow.
Than Pee Wee Whitaker.
That's you know what? I'll say this.
Boxer, not a better
Lee?
boxer.
I'll say this. I understand what you're saying. He's a better finisher than Sweet Pea Whitaker.
Well, I think he's a better all-around. I mean, I think he's a better fighter. I think he's not a better boxer as far as hit and move. But I think with his durability and his punching power, those two things, like the punching power especially.
Well, I'll say this. Our coach, Ronnie Shields, right, who we're going to speak to tomorrow evening at 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern. Coach Ronnie believes that no one beats Sweet Pea Whitaker at 135. Your thoughts on that bold claim?
We're talking about 147. Lee. This is 147.
Okay, 147, yes.
So he said 135. This is 147.
Okay, yep.
So I'm talking about a 147 pound Sweet Pea.
Okay, very good. I agree with that then.
Yeah. He's amazing. I mean, he should be a superstar. He should be like Canelo. Unfortunately, things haven't worked out the way they should have. But he should be as popular as Canelo and Fury and all those other guys. And Mayweather.
The big sigh from Brother Lennar.
He should be on that level.
Crawford is good. He's good, but you guys are just being, in my opinion, you guys are being prisoners of the moment. I guess
Oh
you guys
my
can see.
word! No, brother Lenar.
I don't see it.
We've been telling you this. Okay, once again, I'll resort back to our first heated discussion. I was telling you this back then. Don't be surprised when Bud Crawford dominates Sean Porter and stops him within the distance. I told you this, right? So where are we now? Exactly where I said we were going to be.
Was it a
Right.
domination, or did he was just able to stop him? It was to the point.
It was, I mean,
it was close until it wasn't. Until he's able to stop him and get in a premature stoppage.
Yeah, and why was that? Why was that?
yeah,
Why
I mean,
was
I'm not
that?
going to take away credit here, but I'm just saying it was competitive until it wasn't.
Oh, yes, it was very competitive until it
course it was
wasn't, right?
Sean Porter's always competitive.
Yes.
Okay, so once again, it was very competitive until it wasn't. What the hell does that mean, Lenar?
That means that it's a guy who can be beaten. A guy, and anybody can be beaten. But I might sound like somebody who's hating on Crawford. He's a great fighter. I just think that he's beatable. I think that he gives too many opportunities away. And I just think that I don't want to help. I just think he best beats him. But that's just me. I know I'm on an island on my own with you guys, and I like how Joseph. I appreciate you letting me on your panel and stuff, and just even in disagreement, we can still respect each other.
Of course, and there's always that line of respect. I'm sorry, Lee Cleveland. Your thoughts?
Yeah, on this level, like you're not going to always dominate all. You're not going to be like dominant. This is not like.
Shit, ask Mayweather.
You have to like dominate all the time. Like, on this level, you're going to struggle a bit. The great struggle a bit. And Joseph, we talked about this before the fight. We said Sean Porter's going to bring it.
Yep.
This is not going to be a landslide.
Nope.
We talked about this on the phone.
That's right.
We said Sean Porter. This is going to be a tough fight.
And it was for 6 rounds.
Porter
It absolutely was for 6 rounds.
For 10 rounds.
Like, Sean Porter was going to bring it because we know Sean Porter. So there's no way like Sean Porter's not getting dominated by if you want a 1-round decimation or a 2-round decimation, well, like
that's not going to happen. Yeah, you're right.
Sean Porter's not your guy. But he's a guy that he's going to make you work. He's going to make you sweat. He's going to make you bleed. But if you have the skills, those skills are going to rise to the fore. And eventually, as your buddy Gogi always says, you'll see a separation. As the fight goes on, you'll see a separation eventually.
That's right. Yep. And we did see that this past Saturday night. Yep.
And that's why I called you. So
But
I mean, Sean Porter's a hell of a fighter, though. Like,
he sure is.
This guy would fight tooth and nail. I mean, he gives Shakur Robinson a good fight. I mean, he would give a lot of guys a good fight. He's a hell of a fighter.
Indeed. And that's why they fight the fights, guys. So once again, for Brother Lenar, Brother Lee, there is no right or wrong answer until they both step in the ring, right? So once again, let's go to our brother Big Luke. He says this: Bud had better get busy. He's no longer a young man. And that leads us into our next topic. Lee Cleveland. Crawford. He wants to be a free agent. Now, once again, I'm going to quote Terence Crawford in this past Saturday's press conference, final press conference, post-fight. He said, quote, "Well, I'm pretty sure my decision is made already. Bob couldn't secure me the Errol Spence fight when I was with him. So how's he going to secure the Spence fight when I'm not with him? So, I'm moving forward with my career, and I wish everyone the best," end quote. Okay, and from what I've been told, Terence Crawford wants to try and replicate the success that Canelo Alvarez has had as a free agent. Okay, my question is, and Lee, I want you to go in first. Can he replicate that same success as a free agent without being the same kind of attraction and ticket seller that Canelo Alvarez currently is. Your thoughts, Lee?
No, absolutely not. This guy's really good. He's like Superman, but no, he can't. You need that. Canelo has that momentum. He's a international star. He's a superstar. Terence Crawford, he has the skills of a superstar, but he's not that guy yet.
Yep.
So, but as we've seen, in some of these latest, some of these carnival events, popularity means a lot.
Yep.
Jake Paul and so forth. Popularity means a lot, and Canelo has that. Crawford doesn't.
So what does that mean in terms of free agency, Lee?
Well, it means hard time getting TV dates, hard time.
That's
getting it. It's. Terence Crawford. Yeah, like you're a great fight. In my opinion, easily an all-time great. But these people at the networks are like, Terence Crawford. Who's that? He's not Sugar Ray Leonard. He's not Roberto Duran. He's not Thomas Hearns. But skill-wise, he's on that level. But recognition-wise,
but within the business of boxing, Lee, okay, that means nothing. How good he is. Look at Guillermo Rigondeaux. He was one of the top pound-for-pound fighters in his prime for a very long time, and he couldn't get a fight to save his life. In my opinion.
And the Paul brothers,
yep,
they're like 1-1 or 2-1, and they're making like $10 million a fight.
Yep.
Exactly.
So this is my point. If Terence Crawford thinks he's going to land the Spence fight, remaining a free agent, he's got another thing coming. Unfortunately, and it doesn't end well for anyone who isn't a big attraction. If you become a free agent, just ask Mikey Garcia, right? Who? If you're not a big ticket seller or a big ratings draw.
Who's that?
Yeah. Well, then you're not going to get that same respect as Canelo Alvarez when you go to the negotiation table. In my opinion, the only way Terence Crawford lands that Errol Spence fight is if he gives Al Heyman options on his next 4 or 5 fights.
Yep, exactly.
That's it. Lennar, your thoughts on this, sir?
190K. That's not very good. And then we're talking about a Sean Porter who had a decent, semi-successful pay-per-view with Spence, and it was a high. So everybody knows Porter brings the action, so they want to see that a high level fight and have a good fight. And if the best you can do is 190K, it does not bode well for your case.
Okay, so let me get some clarity on this. Hold on, Lee. Let me give you guys some clarity on this. All right. After speaking with Bruce Trampler today, right, 190,000 is actually turning a profit because of the business model. Once again, they didn't adhere to the cable and satellite distribution. Okay, the only way you could order this fight is through the ESPN Plus app, right? So that means all $70 went to the promoter and the fighter and the network. Okay, so that means with $70 per pop, that means they more than broke even with this. They actually made money. Do you realize how little they had to sell at $70 a piece? Do you realize how little they had to sell to just break even?
How little did they have to sell?
Only 150,000.
Oh, okay.
So with 190,000, they actually made money. And with the $2 million gate at the Mandalay Bay, they paid for the preliminary bouts, their entire undercard. They actually made money on this event.
Oh,
so everyone won in this. Even though 190,000 doesn't seem like much, it's much better because of the distribution method. In order to purchase this fight, according to Bruce Trampler, who I talked to today, you had to purchase the ESPN Plus app, right? And so that means, yeah, they actually made money on this. Okay.
I mean, that's good for the network, but that's $190K. That's not good numbers for the fighters.
Exactly. Exactly, Lennar. So let me ask you this. With only 190,000 sold, right? Yeah. What does this mean for Terence Crawford in the free agent market?
That means that. Wait a minute. How much did Khan and Crawford do?
I'm sorry, Khan and Crawford?
Yeah.
Oh, geez, 125,000.
Yeah, I don't even remember what that. I didn't it do.
But once again, you're talking about a purse that was $11 million. Yeah, they lost their ass. Even with a sold out Madison Square Garden, they still lost their ass because once again, that wasn't strictly app, right? That wasn't strictly app. They still went the method of cable and satellite distribution, right?
And I heard there was a section, not a whole bunch of sections, but there was like a few empty seats, only a little bit though.
According to what I was told, it was a virtual sellout with 11,500, right? That's what I was told today.
So the best you can do, and then Mandalay Bay only holds 13,000, by the way.
That's right.
So that's a fairly small arena. So if you can't sell that out, come on now.
But once again, you're talking about two non-ticket sellers, right? I mean, as much as you want to like Sean Porter, he's never been a big ticket seller, and Terence Crawford has never been a big mainstream draw, right? But I will say this: Spence versus Crawford, that puts in at least 50,000 at AT&T Stadium.
Yeah, that's a great fight. I mean, that fight should be like Leonard Hagler, really. I mean, that's
in a much healthier era. Yes, absolutely.
Not according to you guys, because you guys think he's damaged good. So I don't. If it's you guys,
whoa! That has
to be competitive.
That Lennar. Now, once again, we're separating the business of boxing from the X's and O's in the ring. Oh shit! We just lost Brother Lennar. Okay, well, let's hope we get him back. Let's go to the comment section very quickly. We want to thank Robert Andrea for joining us. He says, if Sean Porter had continued fighting, Bud would have put him to sleep. Yes, I agree. And Robert Andrea says, once again, Crawford stops anybody put in front of him in the 147-pound weight division. Well, I tell you what, we hope that we see it happen and not put anyone to sleep, but that he gets that opportunity. So let's go back to Brother Lennar. Thank you for joining us once again. Hold on, we go to the comment section once again. Want to thank our brother Snoop C for consistently supporting War Week Radio. He says, do you see Keith Thurman retiring before the end of 2022 after a tune-up and then a cash-out fight? Well, let me just read something from Keith Thurman today. And I want to get both Lee and Lennar, both of your takes on this, because in my opinion, I'm not interested in this piece of shit. Ready? Here it comes. Quote from Brother Keith Thurman. He says, quote, I'm going to be getting back in the ring shortly. I'd be more than happy, more than willing to step in the ring with Bud Crawford next summer. I'm willing to fight Crawford 8 months from now. End quote. Lennar, are you interested in seeing anything of that nature?
Keith Thurman, I didn't see Keith Thurman in the ring with somebody. I mean, come on, man. Like, this guy, it's like, I don't want to even hear his name unless a fight official. Unless a fight is official, I don't want to hear nothing Keith Thurman has to say.
Lennar, I'll say this. Unless you're willing to fight Jaron Ennis or Virgil Ortiz, shut the fuck up. Okay? Lee Cleveland, Mr. Editor-in-Chief, what are your thoughts on Keith Thurman's comments?
I echo your sentiments. Yeah. One of those guys. Well, I mean, this was once the hottest fighter in boxing. You know, it's a shame that a guy that's so skilled and so talented, like he was the hottest fighter in boxing, and now it's just he's like on dead, and his skills have eroded a bit. Yeah, Jaron Ennis, fight him. You know, fight someone really good, or go home.
I think that Joseph.
Yes, sir.
And these are two fights. I actually think that because Keith's been talking lately, he's gonna get back in the ring early 2022. Let me know if you hear any cookouts between Spence versus Thurman, because they both need it for a tune-up, or you see like Spence versus Ugas.
Okay, you know what? You know what? I'll say this. Thurman, unless you're willing to prove yourself against the young guns of the welterweight division, just go ahead and retire already. Because you're not the name and the attraction that you think you still are. Right? 5-6 years ago, he was one of the biggest attractions in the welterweight division and in boxing. That's no longer the case. You're a semi-retired fighter, brother. And it's like, look, dude, don't even call out guys like Terence Crawford. You don't deserve it.
He doesn't deserve it at all.
He doesn't deserve shit.
He is yeah. He
That's it.
I don't think, but here's the thing. I think that I don't think Thurman's gonna fight Ennis or Ortiz, because I don't think he's gonna do that. Too much risk.
Well, well, let me ask you
that'd
this.
Be a great fight. I mean, that would be a great. I would love to see Thurman.
I would love to see that, but from a business perspective, this is a guy who still thinks he commands $10 million, right? For a Crawford fight, for a Spence fight. Brother, I mean, dude, talk about living in fantasy land. Holy shit. Are there unicorns where you're going to be fighting? Come on. Like, this is absurd. Keith Thurman?
Crawford can't even demand $10 million his damn self.
Oh my gosh. Like, seriously, Keith Thurman demanded $10 million last year to fight Terence Crawford.
Where's that money going to come from?
Exactly. Where is it going to come from?
You're not going against a big ticket sale.
I'm sorry, from the bank in Fantasyland? Holy shit. Okay,
I'm telling you, Joseph, I think that Thurman's looking. I think that Thurman is gonna. I think that he has probably 1 or 2 fights in him left before he retires. I think that he's probably gonna tune-up in, and he's gonna cash out versus Spence or Crawford. I don't think he's gonna take a step back and fight Ennis or Ortiz. I don't think.
Well, you know what? So. Then stay on the sideline, stay on the bench. Lee, your final thoughts on this before we move forward?
Yeah, I'm not sure he beat Ortiz. Like I mean, he's a hell of a fighter. Don't get me wrong. He was a really hot fighter. But here's a classic case of a guy like Keith Thurman, Mike Garcia, guys that just their prime just drifted away. You know, they just didn't fight. They fell away. They were interested in other things.
Lee, he's had 3 fights over the past 5 years.
Well, that's what I'm saying. He's drifted away. Like, hasn't done a lot. Like, he really hasn't. He's kind of like retired. You know, he's sort of like a Mikey Garcia. Not quite as bad, but well, no, he's actually worse than Mikey Garcia.
I agree.
I think both guys have only 1 loss, right?
Yep. Now Mikey Garcia has 2 losses. It's Sandor Martin.
Oh, that's right.
Hey,
the last guy.
Hey, Lee and Joseph, I have to go now.
I tell you what, Lenar.
It was a pleasure speaking with you guys and getting your guys' perspective on things. And I really enjoy talking boxing with y'all.
Great wisdom.
Lenar, always a pleasure, brother. And if you want to join us once again, we're going to have another episode of War Week Radio Chats on Wednesday night. So we hope to see you then as well.
Everybody support Joseph and hit the like button, please.
Thank you, Lenar. We appreciate it, brother. You have a wonderful evening, sir.
I appreciate it, Lee. Thank you, too.
God bless you, brother.
All right. Bye.
So Snoop C says, and we always appreciate Snoop C for supporting the channel, right? He says, what do you think of the work ethic and outside of the ring professionalism by the current group of welterweights in their early 30s? Lee, what do you think? I have a mixed bag, brother.
I'm not trying to understand the question.
Well, I'll say this. I appreciate the work ethic and professionalism of guys like Sean Porter, guys like Terence Crawford, but I'm sorry, Errol Spence Jr., he's a mess. Right. This is why I heavily favor Terence Crawford in a head-to-head matchup, because he's a slobbering drunk. And yes, you can record me on saying that.
I didn't quite understand the question, though. If you could read that again, I didn't really understand it. Like, what does
it says, Snoop C says, what do you think of the work ethic and outside of the ring professionalism by the current group of welterweights in their early 30s?
Right. Okay. I think Crawford is exemplary. He's like Bernard Hopkins. He's like Klitschko's. This is a guy that eats and breathes boxing.
Yep.
And you have those guys like the Klitschko's or like Ali or these guys eat and breathe boxing. But then you have the other guys who are very talented, like an Errol Spence or Mike Tyson, who kind of deviate a bit. And they don't eat and breathe boxing. But they're very good. But they don't.
Yep.
So, this group of welterweights is. I think Crawford is definitely the creme de la creme. Yep. I don't really know about Jaron Ennis. I don't know how he lives. I haven't really. We haven't heard much from him, but. Crawford definitely has a lifestyle of a boxer, like a top boxer. Like, this is a prototype of a boxer. Again, like Joe Louis, Vladimir Klitschko, Muhammad Ali, Larry Holmes, Marvin Hagler, Bernard Hopkins. These guys are in shape year-round. They fight. No drugs, no booze.
Yep.
No smokes. Those guys have an advantage.
Yep.
They have an advantage. Now, that doesn't mean that some guy can't come up, some guy can't come out of the woodwork. Some guy that maybe smokes pot or whatever, or does, or drinks alcohol. Doesn't mean that he can't win. Doesn't mean that he can't be a great champion. Doesn't mean he can't be an all-time great. But those other guys have an advantage.
Well, I'll say this. Look at Pernell Whitaker, right? This guy had more demons than Linda Blair. Okay? Dude, and we got it firsthand from our brother Ronnie Shields, right? This guy was a Jekyll and Hyde of boxing, and look at what fame and accolades he achieved. Right. But let's go.
He was like one of my dad's favorite fighters, a guy named Willie Pep.
Back in the day. Yep.
And they said you couldn't hit him in the ass with a handful of rice. He was that quick. You couldn't hit him in the ass. Like, you throw white rice at weddings. You couldn't hit him in the ass with a handful of rice.
I love that quote, man. God bless your father, man. That's amazing. So let's go to Jizzy Hizzy. Welcome to the show, sir. Thank you for contributing. He says, what's the highest pay-per-view for a Thurman fight? I'll tell you. It's 500,000 purchases on the cable and satellite distribution method with Manny Pacquiao. That's it. And I understand your point. Why on earth is this guy demanding $10 million? It makes you scratch your head. Once again, delusional some fighters are, in the immortal words of Master Yoda. Stoop C also says, do you find it odd that Sean Porter made no mention of Al Heyman in the post-fight interview, in the ring, or during the post-fight media presser where he announced his retirement? I'll say this. Sean Porter, just upon speaking with Sean Porter, he attributes all of his business decisions from his father, not necessarily Al Heyman, where guys like Errol Spence Jr., guys like Danny Garcia, always contribute or attribute the wise business dealings with Al Heyman. Sean Porter attributes all of his wise business decisions to his father. So yeah, he's going to thank his father before everybody else. That's just the way he rolls. And you know what? It's hard to argue with him. He's made great business decisions, both in and out of the ring, with his father, right? Lee, it looks like we're already 90 minutes in. Do you have any parting shots for our listening audience? Because I think we're going to bid everyone a very good evening.
No, I mean, not unless you do. I mean, it's been a great show. It's been a great job as usual. I'm telling everyone, join in, Joseph Heron, Warwick Radio. This guy is like the real deal. You are the real deal.
Oh, thank you, my friend. You make my job very easy, Lee. Thank you, brother.
No, thank you.
Well, I'll say this. Lee, I tell you what, I really hope we have you back on Wednesday evening, because once again, you provide a lot of insight. And guys, please go visit fightsaga.com on the daily, your centralized hub for everything boxing. And once again, Lee, you're a credit to the sport, brother. We hope to have you back on a regular basis, because the show is much better off with you. With that said, on behalf of Lee Cleveland, I'm Joseph Heron. You've been listening to FightSaga.com's War Week Radio Network. Have a wonderful evening, everybody.
Making your way in the world today takes everything you've got. Taking a break from all your worries sure would help a lot. Wouldn't you like to get away? Sometimes you wanna go where everybody knows your name, and they're always glad you came. You wanna be where you can see our troubles are all the same. You wanna be where everybody knows your name.